thank you so much, members, for finding time to join into this webinar. The webinar is specifically meant for guiding data handlers on processes they need to follow when they're registering with their office. It's one of the prerequisites set out by Data Protection Act of 2019 that all data handlers, those who are processing personal data, must register within our office. And so this is one of the endeavors by the office to assist data handlers, that is data processors and data controllers, in complying with the Act. And that's why we've organized for this webinar to take you through the process of registering. And so I've divided it into two sections. The first sections will go through the content. Those are the notes, just to get to understand the processes of registering. And then the second part is the screenshots that will show exactly steps that needs to be followed while registering. So this is the opportunity for you to be able to seek guidance from your team. My name is Elfa Sagas. Be the one taking you through registrations on behalf of ODPC and our registrations department. So we will start with just to see the steps that handler normally takes when they are registering, and what kind of information data handlers needs to provide, as well as the kind of documents that data handlers needs to provide. When I say data handlers, I mean both data controller and data processor. So the steps is as you've seen. Please, if I'm not audible enough, just type 0. If I'm okay, type 1. So the same note. So there are a number of steps that needs to be followed. Step 1 is verification, 2 basic details, then personal data in terms of categorizing the personal data that your organization is processing. We will then look at what makes up sensitive personal data, and normally this is derived from the description section of your personal data, the different categories that you're providing. There is a drop-down menu where you can choose the countries to which you're transferring personal data to, and then measures of protection of personal data. This is where we'll speak to the importance of doing a data protection impact assessment and doing risk assessment to ascertain the kinds of risks your organization are likely to face, and then come up with controls or mitigation measures to mitigate against those risks. I will also discuss something about employees number and the turnover. This is very crucial because these are the parameters that are being used to calculate the amount of money you pay at the end of it. Then once you move forward from that step, you will be given an opportunity to overview your applications. And probably if there's something that you need to rectify, you can always go back to rectify that. And lastly, you will be prompted to make payment, and the payment is made through the government 22222 through the mobile money. Going to just to understand the difference between a controller and a processor, it's very important for you as an organization to sit down as the protection officer and your team. You need to sit down and ask yourself this question: are you a data controller or are you a data processor? And we've said that a data controller determines the purpose and means for processing of personal data. So the data controller is the one that decides what to be collected, how to be collected, why should it be collected, and how the entire processing is done. And then a data processor, on the other hand, acts on behalf of a data controller. So this is very important to note that a data controller, a data processor acts on behalf of a data controller. And in so doing, it's important for the two parties to engage themselves through a contract. And this contract states the roles and responsibilities of a data processor. it is important that it's clearly drafted as per the Act and the regulations, so that it can be able to assist in an event of a data breach, or in an event of a data processor acting outside the contract. And let's say a data breach occurs, who is liable at what point? So minus this contract, the data controller is fully liable for any data breach or any complaint. But if there's a complaint during the processing by the processor, and it comes out to be that the processor has acted outside the contract, then the contract between the data controller and the data processor will stand to guide the determination. So it's important to distinguish between these two. Then again, it's important to know that if you are both data controller and data processor, the Act requires you to register differently. You register first as a data controller or a data processor, and second, in vice versa manner, that you have to register as a data controller and a data processor. So if you start by registering as a controller, and you've found out that you're acting both as a controller and a processor, you will then register as a data processor. There is a resuming code that you can use to resume back to your registration process and then register as a data processor. And of course, you're going to provide similar documents for them. You need to provide both documents when you're registering as a data controller and also as a data processor. We found situations where data handlers, if they are both controller and processor, they just provide documents as a controller, but they don't provide as a processor. So for us, we treat these two as two different entities because the roles and responsibilities are different. But if you are just practicing as either of them, just processor or controller, then it's enough to just register as one. The second step is to provide basic details. And these basic details is very important. You need to know your legal establishment documents, because this will assist you in terms of deciding which category you fall into. So if you have certificate of incorporation, or you are a society, you're an NGO, churches are registered under NGOs, we have institutions are registered under not-for-profit, and they have their legal establishment documents, which is very important. Then a data protection officer needs to provide contact details. And this is very important because in an event of, for instance, these webinars that we're organizing, we send this notification to data protection officers. So if you provide just an email which is not functional, it may be difficult to reach to your office. Though we know that you also provide the email for your office, which also is important to note that who is in charge of that particular email. Because when communications happens, it happens through the emails or the information that you're providing. And we've come to establish that some of the emails that are being provided are not functional. And that's why the informations from the office does not reach to your office because of false information or incorrect information that has been provided. The Act states it's not compulsory for any organization to have a data protection officer on site, but you must have somebody acting as a data protection officer. You may decide to have one of your employees or have somebody on a different institution acting on your behalf. And the Act states that the same has to be communicated to the office. The office should be aware that who is your data protection officer or who is acting as a data protection officer for your organization. The same has to be published on your website for your clients to be aware who is the data protection officer. After that second step, you move to identifying the classes and categories of personal data. This is very important. When you talk about classes is you need to know if it's just normal personal data or is it sensitive personal data. Are you dealing with, or you're dealing with minors or people with challenges? So you need to sit down and survey your environment categorize them in terms of classes, and then bring it again in terms of categories. When we talk about categories, I'll give an example if it's a school. An example of category could be employees, because a school has employees and they have to collect information from their employees. Another category that a school can have is students. So that is another category. So examples of categories are employees, customers, shareholders, directors, suppliers, students, and the list goes on. It's upon you as an organization to look into your organization and ask yourself, how many categories do we have? And the simple way to ask yourself is you look into the number of forms that you have in your organization. If you have a form that is filled by clients, that makes one category. That is a client category. If you have another form that is filled by your employees, that is another category. If you have a form that is built by shareholders, that's another category. And I know for institutions to have different forms, it's because they are collecting different information from different categories. The information you're collecting from your employees is not necessarily the same information that you're collecting from your clients. Those are different information. And that's why we put them differently as two different categories, because the informations are not the same. And then you need to ask yourself the question, why am I collecting this information? There is a principle under the principles which states that each organizations need to practice what we call data minimization. Collect only the informations that you need. We've had instances where organizations says we are collecting as much information as we can because probably we may need it in future. The Act does not give a leeway for such things. You only collect what you need at that time. And then when you need more information and you've ascertained the legal basis or the lawful basis you're relying on to collect that information, you can go ahead now and collect that information. But each information that you're collecting has to have what we call the lawful basis. Why are you collecting this information? Or rather the purpose. What are you going to use this information? What is the function of what are you going to use this information for? So that is important for organizations to know that. So in registering, you are given one space for one category. So you start by writing, for instance, if the first category is employees, you write employees. Then under description, you write all the personal data you're collecting from that employee category. And you can be guided by the forms that you give to your employees. Identify all personal identifiers and put it inside the category section. Separate it with a comma. I'll give an example. If you're collecting names, ID, phone number, emails, NSSF, social security number, what you do is you just give the names, the generic name, like name, comma, ID, comma, KRA, comma. You don't have to give the actual name, or you don't have to give the actual ID number, because we are practicing privacy also. You don't want to be exposing your client's information when you're registering. Then under the purpose section, that is where you write all the lawful basis you're relying on. You separate it with a comma. So you have to look into your category section, into your description section, and group them accordingly. If you need a name, ID number, phone number for purposes of onboarding new employees, then under the purpose section, you just write for onboarding new employees. If you need NSSF, KRA, share number, what you need to do is you go down there and you say the legal basis or the lawful basis you're relying on is legal obligation for statutory deductions, comma. So you separate it with comma. And then on top of the page, on the right-hand side, there is a button written Add Personal Data Group, as you can see. So you click it and then you add your second category. If your second category is clients, you write clients. under descriptions, you'll give all the information you are collecting from your client. And then under the purpose section, you'll explain why are you collecting each of those information that you've indicated at the description section. And then if you have another category, you keep on adding categories until you've exhausted all the categories that you have within your organization. After doing that, there is a section where you need to identify the sensitive personal data. What happens in this section is you are given a list of what is sensitive personal data. And in that list that you're given, you only pick what is applicable to you. For instance, if you are collecting race from one of the category that could be employees, and there is race under the list of sensitive personal data, you go ahead and explain why you're collecting that race in detail now. If you are collecting marital status, you give the reason. If you are collecting religious beliefs and philosophical beliefs, you go ahead and give the reason. If you're collecting, let's say, biometrics, you go ahead and give the reason why you're collecting them. And at this point, you just check it against the description sections of each category and identify any sensitive personal data that you're collecting on each of the listed categories that you listed on step 3. And then you move to the next step, that is step 5. You have a drop-down menu here. You select all countries that you're transferring personal data to. A question will be asked, do you transfer personal data outside Kenya? Yes or no? If you say no, you'll not have the drop-down menu. If you say yes, you'll have the drop-down menu with all countries listed there. So you just pick the countries that you're separating it. It's transferring your data to. And then you click next. The next step is step 6, where you need to identify risks and safeguards for protecting personal data. For you to be able to do this, what I normally tell clients is you have to do what we call the risk assessment of your working environment. Identify all the risks that you're likely to face. Look at the controls that you have in place. Carry out assessment in terms of likelihood and impact. Give it a risk score, and then evaluate the controls that are in place. Are they able to mitigate it against that kind of risk? If not, come up with other better controls that is able to mitigate against those risks. So it's paramount for all institutions to carry out risk assessment to ascertain the kind of risks. So when you're registering, you'll only pick, because if the Organization Office of Data Protection has given you few examples, it's not an exhaustive list. We don't say that all the risks that we have in that particular drop-down menu is the risk that organization faces. There are more than that. And so in an event of an audit or a complaint, we will require to see your risk assessment report. What kinds of risks do you have or you had anticipated? And what are the control measures that you had put in place? So when you're registering, you just pick few of them. So you'll have a drop-down menu. You'll be given the first one. When you click on that drop-down menu, you'll see a long list of risks. If it's malware, you will click on malware. And then you'll be given a space to write the controls or the safeguards that you put in place to mitigate or to control against those malware. The Act requires organizations to give what we call technical measures as well as organizational measures. For each risk that you identify, you make sure that you've given us both the technical and the organizational measures. Examples of technical measures could be things like policies, trainings, and awareness. Examples of technical could be issues of use of antivirus, access control, user separation, data masking, encryption, use of firewall, and the list goes on. So it's important that you do that. So once you've identified the first risk, there is another button again on top of the right-hand corner. You add another risk. You click on it. You'll be given a space. You go to the drop-down menu, similar to the first one that you did. You pick the second risk that you're likely to face. And then you give the mitigation measures. And in your mitigation measures, be careful to give both technical measures and organizational measures. We've had applications that we've been forced to send it back to the we work on, because probably they only given us technical measures, but there's no any organizational measure or vice versa. The Act is very clear that organizations have to have both technical and organizational measures. Once you've done that, you move to the second step, that is step 7. That is where you are going to pick the tier that you fall into. We have what we call the micro, medium, micro, medium, and large entity. For government entities and non-profit entities, your fees is calculated automatically. It's a flat rate. For other non-government entities or non-profit making entities, the registration fee is calculated based on your annual turnover documents. And that's why it's important when you're registering, you attach your annual turnover documents. And then there is a list of entities that are exempted from mandatory registration. So it's important for you to check into that, whether you fall under this particular list. It's a list, but I am sure that most of the entities are dealing with personal data and are not exempted from registration. After step 7, you'll be prompted to make payment. At this point, due to presidential directive that all government services should be paid through the pay bill number provided. So the option that we have and we are using mostly is M-Pesa payment or mobile money payment. So you'll be required to put the number that you're going to make. Once you put that number, a prompt, you'll just put a password and the deduction will be done automatically. After step 9, the application will come to our end. We will evaluate it. It goes through different steps. If the first step realizes there are things missing, we'll send it back to you for amendments, and we can send it maybe 1, 2, or 3 days. So when you receive, it resets it back. You start counting 14 days from the day when everything is okay and it has been forwarded and it has gone through all the steps and it's waiting for committee approvals and issuance of certificate. But before that, there's a lot of back and forth, because from our end, we are trying to make sure that you are complying with all the provisions of the Act that speaks to registrations and the documents and requirements and the information you are required to provide during registrations. So if we see that you're falling short of what the Act requires, we will send it back to you for amendments. So always feel free to do the amendments, send it back. We'll check it again. If there's something to be rectified, we'll send it back to you. So always check on your application frequently so that you can be able to do the amendment. Sometimes you may send an application and within maybe 10 minutes, it's on our desk and we revert it back to you, and maybe you are not logged in, you're still waiting for it. So it's always good to check your email and your portal if there's any amendments or if there's no any amendments. The registration certificate will be valid for 2 years, but there are instances where it can be revoked. If, for instance, there are complaints, or we find out that you've not complied with, or if you find out that you've given us false information, or we find out that you've not implemented what you're telling us you've implemented, that particular certificate can be revoked. So it's not guaranteed that once you have, you just take it and relax and do nothing. It's important to that. So I'll quickly take you through the screenshots, how you do the registration, just to solidify what we've discussed together. So this is our web page. As you can see, it's a simple web page. Simple, easy to understand, and easy to navigate. I'm zeroing in to registering as a data handler because it is what the webinar is meant for. So you will click on register as a data handler. That will appear. You click on account link. And then if you are registering for the first time, or yes, you'll click register as a data handler. Once you click there, you'll be taken to this particular page where you have pre-registration process, and it will show you all the steps that you're going to take when you're registering. So if you're a first-time register candidate, you just click first time. If you're resuming, you click resuming. This means that you had begun registration sometimes back, but you stop it midway. Now you are logging in to continue with your registration. Or you had registered as a, let's say, a data controller, and now you want to register as a data processor. So you'll always, those are two instances where you will use the resuming code to register. So when you click resuming code, resuming registration, you'll be required to give the resuming code. And this is normally provided for. It's normally sent to your email during your initial registration. Your first registration, you'll get a resuming code. That resuming code has an expiry date, but you can always request for a resuming code from our office. It's a just request. So if you're a first-time registration, you'll click first-time registration, and you'll have something like this it's something like this, which will tell you, do you want to register as a controller or a processor? When you click data controller, it will ask you, are you a government institution, a private institution, or not-for-profit and religious institution? If you're a government institution, you click on government institution, and that is the end. If you're a private, and that is the end for this step, and then you move to another step now. If you are registering as a private institution, it will ask you the type of private institution, whether you have a BRS number, individual ID, or others, things like SACCOs. So you'll be, and also for medical facilities that have KMPDC certificates. So if you have a certificate for incorporations with a BRS number, you will put your BRS number inside there, and it will automatically query the BRS database to confirm whether that particular certificate is valid. Sometimes you may put your BRS number and it refuses, you can't move to the next step. It's because maybe you've mistyped it or you provided the wrong BRS number. For individuals, you just put your ID number, and then for others, you'll put that relevant document. So that is just a flowchart. If you're a school, if you're an NGO, if you're a church, you will choose that I want to register as a controller, data controller, then you click not-for-profit entities, and from there you'll move to the next step. So this is similar to the flowchart. So assuming that you click first-time registration, this will appear. You'll be required to put the name, registration representative. You put the name of your representative, the email, the phone number, institution, and your relation to the institution. And then you choose that if you're you want to register as a data controller. If you're a private, we've seen that there are three options. Are you institution, individual, or others? If you are not for profit, that is it. You just click not for profit and nothing comes up. If you are government, that is the end. If you click institution, you'll be required to give the BRS number. If you click others, you'll be required to give national ID number, individual national ID number. If you click others, you'll be given a drop-down menu you can choose from. And once you've done that, you click next. And that is where you put the details, institutions or individual name, if you're registering as an individual, the country, the county, the postal address, the telephone number, the legal establishment document, the sector you fall in, the subsector. You attach your legal establishment document. You give the details of the address and also the details of the data protection officer. For now, it's required. It's no longer exemption. It's no longer optional. You must provide details for your data protection officer. This is where we've also received challenges. If your data protection officer details changes, you have to write to the office and notify the office to effect the changes. You can't effect the changes from your end. So make sure that you always have the current information of who is your data protection officer for ease of communication between our office to your office. After that, this is where we're talking about the categories, personal data. So you'll only be given the first one, which is you'll have the first category, you put employee, description, you put all the personal identifiers from your employees that you're collecting on. You've given example, you say name, comma, address, comma, ID number, comma, phone number, comma, and then you give the lawful basis, the reason why you're collecting it. KYC means you're using, your client is legitimate interest, and you can't collect sensitive personal data and you're telling us you're using KYC. KYC as you need to do what you call the in legitimate interest assessment to ascertain that you're not compromising on data subjects' right. So make sure that you understand the purpose for it. You can check on the act. It has clearly stated the lawful basis. And then you click on add personal data group. The second section will appear. You put the second category, you put the description and the purpose. If you have another one, you add personal data group, and you do that until you've included all the categories that you have as an institution. From there, you move to the other section. You'll be required to state whether you're collecting sensitive personal data or not. So what you can do to simplify your work, you go back to the categories, check on the description. Is there any sensitive personal data you're collecting? If yes, bring it here. You choose yes, and then identify. Are you collecting racial? Yes. If it's yes, you give a detailed description. Are you collecting beliefs? If it's yes, you give a detailed description. Are you collecting sex or sexual orientation? If yes, give description. Are you collecting genetic data? You do so. If you are not collecting any or some of these, you just leave it blank. You don't have to type anything, just leave it blank. And then type next, click next. You'll have a drop-down menu that will ask you, does your data reside outside Kenya? If it's yes, if you click yes, you'll be in a drop-down menu. If you click no, you'll not be given this drop-down menu. So it's important to know whether you're transferring personal data outside the country. And then you click next. At this particular section, these are risk measures. You'll be given only one, like the first one. And when you click on a drop-down menu, you'll be given a whole list of that the organization may face. So you choose if you're likely to face a malware attack. And this you can be guided by your risk assessment report. So you look at your risk assessment report, transfer it to this particular section, check on the drop-down menu, and identify the risks that you're likely to face. Once you've identified that I'm likely to face, my organization is likely to face under safeguard measures, this is where you give technical measures. You say, these are you mention if it's firewall, antivirus, just mention everything that you put in place to protect yourself in form of technical measures to protect yourself against malware attack. And then now ask yourself, what are the organizational measures that are put in place to protect my organization against malware attack? Once you've done that, you click add risk. The second option comes in, and you can see you can delete it. If you click and you don't need it, you just delete it. So if the second risk is phishing attack, under safeguard measures, you give technical and organizational. You click add risk measures. The third one will come. If the risk is social engineering, you give both technical and organizational measures. And then click next once you've finished. And this is where you'll be required to attach your turnover documents. And when we say turnover document, we want your previous year audited financial statement document that shows that you have audited your documents. And then again, if it's a newly incorporated organization, you just write a letter approximating how much you expect to get. And then there is a drop-down menu here. You choose the number of employees, and then you attach a letter. You need also to draft a letter stating or telling the office the number of employees that you're going the annual turnover is maybe 10 million, and my employees is maybe 45. The amount of money you're going to pay is 16,000. If you say your annual turnover is 50 million, above 50 million and your employees is above 99, you're going to pay 40,000. Government entities pays a flat rate of 4,000. NGOs, not-for-profit, those are churches, non-governmental organization, institutions, those are either private or public institution, all of them falls under NGO. They pay a flat rate of 4,000. I've emphasized that audited financial statement for the previous year. Don't give us for the 2022, 2021 for the previous year. It should be able to show us the total revenue, should capture dates and signature. It should be an official document. For reference, you can always refer to data protection. Those are registrations of data controllers and data processors regulations of 2021. And a second schedule where it will give you the template for DPI and also the template for identifying the risks and the mitigation measures. After that, click next. This is where you'll be prompted to put your M-Pesa number, the number that you're going to make payment from. And then now when you put the right number and you click next, a pop-up will come to your phone. You put your PIN, and that is it. The payment will have been completed, and automatically it will be, your registration will be submitted to our office. And when it's submitted to our office, our officers will evaluate it against the act. And if there are areas that needs to be amended, it will be sent back to you. If everything is okay, it will be forwarded for approvals. It will go through all the stages to the stage where you will get your certificate. Feel free to contact our office. We have our HQ office at Britam Tower, Nairobi. We have branch in Mombasa, Nakuru, Kisumu, Nyeri, Garissa, Eldoret. And those are the emails. You can always contact us at compliance@odpc.go.ke. For registration purposes, send it to registrations@odpc.go.ke. For training inquiries, send it to training@odpc.go.ke. But if you are within the locations where these offices are, you can always walk into our offices. These are government offices. Anytime between 8 to 5 in the evening, our offices are open, and you'll get an officer who will assist you through. Otherwise, thank you so much.